chosen one stop scrolling. The last 72 hours were not stress, not overthinking, and definitely not random. What you've been feeling is a spiritual recalibration, a destiny shift happening in real time, and if you misread it, you don't just feel off, you delay the season that was assigned to you. Let me say it plainly, the heaviness, the strange restlessness, the sudden discomfort with what used to fit this is not punishment. This is alignment. This is heaven adjusting your trajectory with precision, because what's coming next cannot land on the old version of you. And I need you to make one small commitment right now. Give me the next 60 seconds. Because one line in this message is going to explain what you couldn't explain to anyone around you. Quick question, and answer it honestly. In the past 3 days, have you felt unusually heavy for no clear reason, yes or no? Because if the answer is yes, you are not breaking down. You are breaking out. Something is being cut off, something is being cleared, and something is being accelerated, whether your logic can track it or not. You don't stumble into a moment like this by accident. You were led here on purpose, and the people who dismiss this message will call it just a video. But you and I both know when a word hits you with weight, it's because it was aimed at you. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to show you why the doors have been closing, why certain connections have been fading, why your spirit has been uneasy even when your life looks fine, and how to respond so you don't miss the window that's opening right now. Now, if you receive this, comment 777 and declare, I will not miss my season. Then like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with one person you refuse to let sleep through their assignment. You've been interpreting this weight like it's a warning sign that you did something wrong, like heaven is disappointed with you, like you missed the turn, and now you're paying for it, but that's not what this is. This is alignment pressure. This is what it feels like when your inner world is being recalibrated to match a future your old mindset couldn't carry. Scripture doesn't describe transformation as comfortable. It calls it renewal. Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Romans 12:2. That means the battle you're feeling isn't proof you're failing, it's proof you're changing. And if you felt detached from what used to excite you, if conversations feel shallow, if your spirit has been restless even when your life looks fine on paper, that's not you falling apart. That's you outgrowing the old room. If anyone is in Christ, he is a new creation. The old has passed away. Behold, the new has come. 2 Corinthians 5:17. Notice the order. The old passes away before the new fully arrives, and that middle space can feel like confusion, like silence, like pressure because you're standing between versions of yourself. That's why these last 72 hours have felt like a fog you can't explain. Your soul is letting go of a former identity while your future identity is still loading. This is why you can't go back emotionally. Even if you try, you've crossed an invisible threshold. Let me ground this with Joseph. Joseph didn't get rejected by God when the pit happened, and he didn't get abandoned when the prison door locked. He got positioned. The same environment that looked like delay became the corridor to influence, because what people call setback, God often uses as setup. Joseph's gift didn't disappear in the dark. His character got refined there, his discernment got sharpened there, and his authority got formed there. That's what's happening to you. Not punishment, but preparation. And here's the psychological layer that matters. When you can't name what you feel, you start blaming yourself for it. You start thinking, maybe I'm unstable, maybe I'm not spiritual enough, maybe I'm doing something wrong. No, your nervous system is reacting to a shift because leaving the familiar always triggers discomfort, even when the familiar was limiting you. This is why you feel tension. The old patterns want certainty, but the new season requires trust. And this is where C.S. Lewis quietly exposes what's really going on inside you. In Mere Christianity, he argues that if you find in yourself a desire that no earthly thing can satisfy, the most probable explanation is that you were made for another world. In other words, the ache in you isn't proof you're broken. It can be evidence you were designed for more than what you've been tolerating. So if your spirit has been hungry, restless, unable to settle for almost, that is not a character flaw. That is a calling signal. Now I want a small commitment. Don't overthink it. Just do it. Whisper, I am being aligned, not abandoned. Say it again, slower. I am being aligned, not abandoned. Because when you name the season correctly, you stop fighting it. And when you stop fighting it, you finally see what it's been trying to produce in you. And what it's producing next is going to require space. So in the next part, I'm going to show you why things are falling away, why some connections are fading, and why that clearing is not loss, it's protection. This is where it gets serious, because what you're calling things falling apart is actually a divine evacuation. And if you keep sentimentalizing what God is trying to remove, you will turn your own deliverance into delay. Hear me. Some of what's fading right now is not unfortunate. It is unsafe for your next season. Some of what's closing is not rejection. It is protection with teeth. And I know that sounds intense, but it has to be, because your future is not fragile, it's expensive. It will cost you access to places you've been addicted to, conversations that keep your spirit small, habits that numb you, and relationships that feel familiar but quietly suffocate your assignment. This is the moment where people lose years, not because they aren't gifted, but because they refuse to release. They keep dragging old attachments into a new season, and then they wonder why nothing fits, why nothing flows, why everything feels heavy. It's heavy because it's not yours anymore. You're carrying what you were supposed to leave behind. Scripture shows this pattern with terrifying clarity. When Israel stood at the edge of the Jordan, they were not allowed to cross into the promise while still thinking like slaves. The wilderness had to end, and with it, the reflexes of Egypt. Joshua didn't negotiate that boundary. He didn't hold a committee meeting with nostalgia. He led them to a line in the dirt, and heaven demanded a decision. Because there are thresholds you can't cross while you're still clutching the old identity. And the Jordan wasn't just a river. It was a test of timing. They had to step before the water moved. That's the part you keep missing. The miracle responded to movement. The opening didn't happen to make them brave. The opening happened after they obeyed. That's why the last 72 hours have felt like pressure in your chest, like a tightening in your spirit, like something is off, even when nothing is visibly wrong. It's not off. It's the alarm system of your calling telling you, stop trying to live in what you've outgrown. This clearing is God making room. And when God makes room, it doesn't always look gentle. It looks like disconnection. It looks like unanswered texts that used to trigger you but now don't. It looks like you walking away from a habit and realizing the relief is louder than the craving. It looks like a door shutting and you trying to reopen it, but the handle won't turn because heaven has locked what would have lured you back into circles. Let me say it the way your spirit needs to hear it. If it can't follow you into purpose, it must be removed from your proximity, because your next level requires capacity, and capacity requires space. And space doesn't come from wishing. Space comes from releasing. This is why you're feeling lonely in rooms that used to feel full. Your spirit is no longer fed by what once entertained you. This is why you're feeling irritated by conversations you used to tolerate. Your discernment is waking up. This is why you feel like you're standing between worlds, because you are. And if you don't treat this moment with seriousness, you will rebuild what God just tore down, and then you'll call it a second chance, when it's actually a second trap. So here is your next micro-commitment, and it's not optional if you want to move forward. Say, I release what cannot follow me. Say it again like you mean it. I release what cannot follow me. Now answer me, because your response tells me what God is touching in you. What has been quietly fading lately? People, habits, or places? Comment one word: people, habits, or places. And stay with me, because in the next part, I'm going to expose the hidden engine that keeps trying to drag you back, striving, proving, performing so you can finally breathe and move like someone who's truly called. What's happening to you right now is not just external change, it's internal surgery. Because God is not merely trying to move you into a new environment, He's trying to remove an old engine that has been powering your life for too long, striving. And you need to treat this as urgent, because striving is the most dangerous counterfeit of spiritual hunger. It looks productive, it looks disciplined, it even looks responsible. But underneath it, it's often fear wearing a suit, fear of being unseen, fear of not being enough, fear that if you stop pushing, everything will collapse. And the reason this matters so much is simple. You can't carry a destiny built by the Spirit with a nervous system addicted to control. If you keep building with striving, you will always need applause to feel safe, speed to feel valuable, and results to feel chosen. That's why this season feels like resistance. God is confronting the part of you that keeps trying to earn what was meant to be received. This is not about laziness versus hard work. This is about motive. This is about the difference between effort that flows from identity and effort that tries to purchase identity. And if you don't let this die, you will keep arriving at open doors with a closed heart, because you'll be exhausted, suspicious, and constantly measuring yourself. That is not freedom. That is bondage with a religious label. This is why Gideon is the perfect mirror for you right now. Gideon was not standing on a platform when God spoke to him. He was hiding. He was minimizing himself. He was trying to survive, not trying to shine. Yet the angel called him mighty warrior before he ever won a battle. That's the pattern. God speaks identity before he demands performance. Gideon didn't need a new schedule. He needed a new self-concept. And you don't need more pressure, you need revelation. Because the moment you truly see who God says you are, striving starts to starve. Scripture makes it plain. Not by might, nor by power, but by my Spirit. Zechariah 4-6. That means your next season is not sustained by intensity. It's sustained by surrender. The reason God is allowing things to slow down, why your old methods aren't working, why the hustle feels dry, is because He is breaking your dependence on force. He is teaching you to move by leading, not by pushing. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Some of you have been addicted to the adrenaline of proving. You don't just want success, you want vindication. You want to show the people who doubted you that you were worth believing in. But if your fuel is revenge, your success will never feel like peace. It will feel like debt, because you'll always need the next win to silence the next insecurity. That's why God is stepping in right now, because He loves you too much to let you build a future that keeps you spiritually starving. And this is where C.S. Lewis exposes the strategy behind the pressure. In the Screwtape Letters, he illustrates how the enemy doesn't always need a dramatic sin to destroy a life. Sometimes all it takes is exhaustion, distraction, and slow compromise, until a soul forgets how to listen. Striving is one of the enemy's favorite tools because it keeps you busy enough to look faithful while slowly disconnecting you from intimacy. You pray, but you're rushing. You work, but you're empty. You worship, but you're performing. And God is saying, no more. So here is your micro-commitment, and you need to do it with your body, not just your thoughts. Put your hand on your chest and say, I don't have to perform to be chosen. Again, I don't have to perform to be chosen. Let that land, because it is the beginning of deliverance. When striving breaks, your spirit can finally breathe. When striving breaks, your ears can finally hear again. And this sets up the next part, because once God removes striving, He often introduces something that feels frightening at first. Silence, not punishment, training, not absence, invitation. And if you interpret the silence wrong, you'll run back to noise, so stay with me. Now we're going to confront the part that scares most people, because this is where many callings die, the silence. When it gets quiet, you start interrogating heaven. You replay every mistake. You scroll for distractions. You look for a sign, a voice, a rush, anything to prove you're still being guided. But listen closely. The silence you're in is not rejection. It's training. It's the difference between living on emotional confirmation and living on conviction. Because if God is preparing you for weight, He cannot let you remain dependent on noise. He will teach you to stand steady when nothing is clapping for you, when nothing is moving fast, when you can't feel what you used to feel. That is not cruelty. That is maturity. This is why Psalm 46:10 hits like a command, not a suggestion. Be still and know that I am God. Stillness is not emptiness, it's revelation without volume. Stillness is where false urgency dies. Stillness is where your nervous system stops being the steering wheel. And if you've been experiencing spiritual quiet lately, worship feeling flatter, prayers feeling like they hit the ceiling, conversations feeling less stimulating, it may be because God is detoxing you from shallow dependence. He is not trying to entertain you. He is building you. That's why Hannah is the perfect picture for this season. Hannah carried a promise in her spirit while her reality mocked her. Year after year, no visible change, and it would have been easy for her to call it abandonment. But Hannah didn't quit. She went deeper. She didn't perform a pretty prayer, she poured out a raw one. Her silence was not the end of her story. It was the forge of her endurance. And when the breakthrough came, it didn't just give her a child, it gave her a testimony that could not be counterfeited. That's what God is doing with you, building a testimony that cannot be explained by trends, luck, or human approval. Here's the psychological truth that most people ignore. When you don't get instant reassurance, your system panics, because it's been trained by quick rewards, quick likes, quick replies, quick results. But delayed reinforcement creates something stronger than hype. Stability. It teaches your mind to anchor instead of spiral. It teaches your spirit to trust without constant proof. That's why you felt stretched, because you're being rewired. And here is your micro-commitment right now. It's small, but it's powerful. For the next 10 seconds, breathe slowly and say, "Stillness is my training ground." Again, stillness is my training ground. Let your body learn what your spirit already knows, because once you stop fighting the silence, you start hearing what the noise was hiding. You start recognizing the patterns that were draining you. You start discerning the difference between God's timing and your anxiety. And that's the turning point, because your next season will demand a calm mind, a clean heart, and an unshakable center. Now I need you to answer me, because this tells me whether you're ready for what's next. When it gets quiet, do you spiral or do you anchor? Comment anchor if you choose peace today. And stay with me, because in the next part we're going to break the deepest chain of all, not doubt, not fear, but the vow you made in pain that has been silently limiting your life. Now we go to the root, because this is where destiny gets strangled quietly, not by a dramatic failure, but by a private agreement you made in pain. I'm talking about the vow you whispered to yourself after disappointment, betrayal, humiliation, or loss. You didn't announce it, you didn't write it down, but you felt it settle into your spirit like a survival strategy. I won't hope like that again. I won't trust like that again. I won't open my heart like that again. I'll stay small so I don't get hurt. And the tragedy is that you called it wisdom, but it was fear pretending to protect you. That vow didn't just guard you from pain, it also blocked you from promise. Because you cannot receive a new season with an inner contract that says, I refuse to risk. This is why some of you have been stuck in cycles, even though you pray, even though you fast, even though you know better, because your mouth says faith, but your nervous system has been loyal to the vow. And heaven is not overlooking it anymore. Heaven is exposing it, because what's coming requires a healed you, not a guarded you. This is why the enemy loves shame. Shame doesn't just say, you did something wrong. Shame says, you are doing something wrong. It convinces you that you are the variable that disqualifies you, that your past has the final word, that you should stay silent, stay hidden, stay safe. But that's not the voice of God. The Lord is near to the broken-hearted and saves the crushed in spirit. Psalm 34-18. Near, not disgusted, not distant, near. And here's where Esther steps into your story with holy urgency. Esther had every reason to stay quiet. She had comfort, security, a position that could have kept her protected. But there came a moment when hiding was no longer neutral, it became costly. Mordecai's message wasn't gentle, it was a spiritual alarm. If you stay silent now, you will miss what you were positioned for. And who knows whether you have not come to the kingdom for such a time as this. Esther 4:14. That is a mirror for you. There is a such a time as this hovering over your life right now, and the vow you made in pain is trying to keep you from showing up for it. This is also why Job matters not as a threat, but as a revelation of what pain can do to a human mouth. In the depths, Job spoke from torment, and later his posture shifted into humility and restoration. The lesson isn't, don't feel. The lesson is this: pain will try to recruit your words. Pain will try to make you prophesy smallness over your own future. Pain will try to make you announce a ceiling and call it maturity. But your words are not neutral, they are agreements. And if you want alignment, you must cancel the wrong agreements. This is where C.S. Lewis becomes surgical. In The Problem of Pain, he describes pain as something that can function like a megaphone to awaken a deaf world. In other words, pain doesn't have to be your prison. It can become your wake-up call. And right now, the pain you survived is not being used to shame you. It's being used to expose the vow you made so it can finally be broken. So here is your micro-commitment, and I need you to do it with your voice, because silence is how these vows survive. Say, I renounce the vow I made in pain. Again, with authority, I renounce the vow I made in pain. Now say this: I cancel my agreement with shame. And one more: I am safe enough to obey. Feel the shift. Because when that vow breaks, you stop living like you need permission to move. You stop waiting for the perfect sign, the perfect feeling, the perfect guarantee. You stop negotiating with fear. And in the next part, I'm going to show you the line that separates people who stay stuck from people who step into acceleration, because your next season will not require certainty. It will require movement. Here's the line you have to cross. And I'm going to say it in a way that cuts through every excuse. If you keep waiting for certainty, you will keep living in delay. Not because God is withholding, but because fear has disguised itself as wisdom in your mind. You tell yourself you're being careful, you're being strategic, you're being patient, but underneath it, there's often one hidden demand your soul keeps making. Prove it first, and then I'll obey. And that demand sounds reasonable until you realize it is the opposite of faith. Faith is not the reward you get after evidence. Faith is the movement you choose before evidence. Now, faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. Hebrews 11:1. Notice what that means. You won't always feel ready. You won't always see the full picture, and you won't always have confirmation in your emotions, but you will have a call, and the call is enough. This is why some of you have been stuck in the same circle for years while still calling it preparation. You keep collecting information, waiting for conditions to be perfect, trying to eliminate risk, yet your spirit has been screaming that the season is already shifting. The tragedy isn't that you don't have potential, it's that you keep postponing obedience until it becomes numbness. You don't need more signs. You need a decision. And if that sounds intense, it's because the stakes are real. Your next season will not accommodate half steps. It requires forward motion. That's why the story of Jonathan and his armor-bearer is so dangerous in the best way. Jonathan didn't stand around demanding a guaranteed outcome. He didn't say, "Let's wait until the odds look better." He said something that exposes the true nature of courage. "Come, let us go over. It may be that the Lord will work for us, for nothing can hinder the Lord." 1 Samuel 14. Do you hear it? It may be. Not certainty, not control, not perfect clarity, just a willingness to move while still human. And the armor-bearer answered with the kind of loyalty your own faith needs to give you right now. "Do all that is in your heart. I am with you." That is what alignment looks like, your spirit and your decision walking together, even when your feelings are still catching up. This is the moment you stop demanding a guarantee and start practicing obedience. Because obedience is the bridge between your current reality and your future assignment. And I'm not talking about reckless impulse. I'm talking about the next right step you already know you've been avoiding. The call you keep postponing, the conversation you keep delaying, the habit you keep excusing, the door you keep standing in front of without turning the handle, the uncomfortable move you keep labeling later. Later is not always patience. Sometimes later is fear in disguise. So, here is your micro-commitment, and I need you to say it. Like you're choosing a new identity. I move before I see. Again, with conviction. I move before I see. Now add this. Obedience is my acceleration. Because the moment you stop waiting for certainty, momentum returns, clarity returns, strength returns. And in the next part, I'm going to show you the signs that prove you're entering your next season, so you stop interpreting the pressure as a problem and start recognizing it as proof. You need to stop treating what you're experiencing like a breakdown, because what you're describing has a pattern, and that pattern is a signal. When God is transitioning you into a new season, there are markers quiet but undeniable like fingerprints on the atmosphere. And once you recognize them, you stop panicking, you stop second-guessing, and you stop running back to what's familiar just because it's familiar. Let me give you the signs, not as theories, but as spiritual evidence you can test against your own life right now. First sign, what used to satisfy you feels strangely dull, not because you're ungrateful, but because your appetite is changing. Your spirit is refusing to be fed by what once entertained you. Second sign, your tolerance for compromise is shrinking. Things you used to excuse now irritate you. Your conscience feels louder. Your discernment feels sharper. That's not you becoming too much. That's you becoming clean enough to carry weight. Third sign, relationships start shifting without dramatic fights. Certain connections don't feel evil. They just feel off. You can still love people and still recognize they don't have permission to shape your next season. Fourth sign, you feel unusual fatigue, but it's not only physical, it's spiritual. Your body is reacting to internal remodeling. When God is doing deep work, even your sleep patterns and emotional bandwidth can shift, because your inner world is being restructured. Fifth sign, you start noticing an increase in resistance the moment you choose growth. This one is critical, because many people interpret resistance as wrong direction, when often it's the opposite. Nehemiah experienced this.